This is a journey which, for many, is a step into an unknown world. And it starts with a question. What do all these famous men have in common? Winston Churchill, John Wayne, US President Truman, Clark Gable, Rabbie Burns, Peter Sellers, Rudyard Kipling, Buzz Aldrin, George Washington, Henry Ford, Archbishop Fisher, and Harry Houdini. Perplexed? Well, ponder no longer, because they were all Freemasons. Even the music you're hearing now, from the Magic Flute, was written by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and he was a Freemason. It's an opera based, it's said, on Masonic themes. For centuries, the Freemasons, their lodges, and the reasons for their existence have been a secret, a thing of the shadows. But in Canterbury, there's a building in which a corner of this traditional secrecy is being lifted. And this is it. It's called, without any pretense, the Kent Masonic Library and Museum. The chairman is Charles Boxer. In Masonic parlance, he's known as an Assistant Provincial Grand Master. It's he who will guide us around the museum today. Most Masonic lodges were and still are community-based. Many represent particular groups like shopkeepers, the police, the medical profession, the church, musicians, army regiments and farmers. How did it all begin?
The first official appearance of Freemasonry appears to have been in 1717 when a Grand Lodge was formed. It happened in the period of the Enlightenment, which would be the 17th century, when with the end of religious persecution, people then began talking and philosophizing amongst themselves without fear of being persecuted for their beliefs. Most of these early lodges met either in private houses or in pubs or inns where they could get refreshment.
So what exactly is a Freemason's lodge?
It's a group of like-minded people who've got together to enjoy each other's company and to perhaps do a little bit of good as well. To be a Freemason, you've got to be a man. You've got to be mature, which means normally that you've got to be over 21 years. And you should have sound judgment, which I guess comes of being mature. And you have good morals, you have strict morals.
And who's the judge of your strict morals? Who's going to judge that?
Well, I guess your fellow man judges that.
Many of the Masonic symbols are borrowed from the building trade.
They use the analogy that the stonemason had of building great buildings. The original stonemasons, of course, came from France, but the skill was then passed on to English masons, who then built the great cathedrals in the Middle Ages. A stonemason wore a leather apron when he was at work. Originally, the aprons were very, very simple, but the Victorians loved ornamentation, and we saw aprons becoming more and more ornamented during the 19th century. We have in our collection some very early aprons, and they were obviously handmade and hand decorated. Today, when you first become a Mason, it is a plain white apron with no embellishment whatsoever.
Is Freemasonry a Christian organisation?
Freemasonry has as an absolute requirement that you believe in a supreme being. Originally in England, that meant being a Christian, because there was no other recognised religion. And then, a couple of hundred years ago, that was widened to include people of all faiths, a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, a Sikh. They can all be members of the same lodge even.
As Charles Boxer says, Freemasonry is traditionally a male organisation. Yet there are women Freemasons.
There are, and I'm sure the women will forgive me if I say that they've modelled their Freemasonry on that of male Freemasonry. But the Grand Lodge of England, which I'm a member, and the one which is the prevalent Freemasonry in the UK, insists that only a man can become a Freemason. We acknowledge each other's existence, but we do not permit ladies to attend a meeting of our lodge, and likewise they don't permit us to attend theirs.
Would you say that that's keeping pace with the 21st century?
That's a good question. I can't predict what's going to happen in the future. I believe there's no chance it will happen in the near future.
The meeting place of Freemasons in Canterbury is an ornate affair.
It includes bits of furniture which have obviously had an ecclesiastical source, perhaps a redundant church, but the basic layout with the seating for members round the edge, the chair for the master at one end and the chair for the senior warden at the other end is a characteristic of all Masonic lodges. The checkered floor covering is also a characteristic of every lodge. It's meant to represent the light and dark of human existence, you know, the joys and sorrows of one's earthly life.
And the Bible in this instance is a focal point?
The members have their sacred volume on view to remind them of their faith. It's opened when the lodge is open. If there are more than one faith amongst the membership, then we might have the Quran or the Torah or whatever.
Significance of the globes?
One was the celestial globe, which is all the stars of the sky, and the other was the terrestrial, that is the earth. They are symbolic of the universality of Masonry.
What about the G above your head?
It stands for